Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this another evening with discussion. We are recording this live from Seniors Hub with an interesting, intimate audience here of young people. The evening with is a series that focuses on bringing thought leaders and people who have milestones in their life here to come and share with us their experience and also give us insights on issues that will be pertinent to development, to youth engagement in this country. And this particular one is very different because it's happening during the Black History Month. In conjunction with we're also doing this together with the Canadian Embassy, and I'm delighted to have Julius here, who is no stranger to this place, and also to a lot of you here in Juba, South Sudan. So, karibu.
Asante sana.
Yeah. Welcome to Seniors Hub. I will just dive immediately kind of in. So for the benefit of the people who probably haven't been in Juba that long, maybe you can just tell us your name and what you do.
Thank you, Nelson. Let me say it's a great honor to be here again, having this session and engaging with wonderful, empowered youth of South Sudan. My name is Julius Egbeyemi, currently the Chargé d'Affaires or head of Canada to South Sudan. I've been in South Sudan for about 2 years now, and I've occupied a number of positions at the embassy, but right now as the head of mission.
As the head of mission, right? Yeah, thanks. So probably maybe I can just start by asking you to tell us a little bit about where you were born and your upbringing in your early life, so that we are a bit intrigued. You're the head of mission for the Canadian Embassy, but if someone looks at your attire and everything, it looks like directly from a Nigerian movie. So if you can just tell us where you were born and what kind of a setup was it?
Thank you. Wearing this today is actually by design. It wasn't by accident. I wanted to showcase my background and my culture. So every time people see me, they can easily identify by the marks on my face, and easily they say, "You look West African." And I said, "How do you know?" And they said, "Well, from your accent or from your facial appearance." And I think that's quite very indicative of where I was born. So to not beat about the bush, yes, you guessed it very right. I was born in Nigeria, southwestern Nigeria, so I'm a Yoruba man. You can see my hat and even my wristband, which is very cultural to the Yoruba people. So I was born, and my last name, Egbeyemi, actually is the name of a village in southwestern Nigeria. Ogun State is about an hour and a half to Lagos, if you know your geography very well and you know the geography of Nigeria. Lagos is right by the Atlantic Ocean, and my hometown, Abeokuta, which is same hometown as former President Obasanjo, and any of you also know a bit about Nigerian.
Yeah.
You would have heard about Wole Soyinka, the Nobel laureate. They're all people born in
They're born within that village?
that same city. No, the
Same city.
Abeokuta. But my village is about 50 kilometers from the city, which is named after my grandfather, who was born in that village. So that's the village in which I was born. And I was talking about it the last time I was here, that as I'm talking right now, there is no electricity or pipe-borne water or any good roads that connect my village to the main road. So I grew up as a farm boy, going to the farm, helping my parents grow cocoa and cola nuts and cassava, yam, vegetables. So I was quite handy. I knew a lot about farm work. So that was my upbringing. And but one thing I said is, despite the lack of electricity or amenities, in my village, there is a school.
How was, without revealing your age, how was the socio-political situation in Nigeria at the time that you were kind of growing up by then?
That's a good question. As at that time, it was immediately after the Biafra War. Those of you that know also the history of the country very well, Nigeria went through a civil war between 1967 and 1970, where a section of the country wanted to secede from the country called Nigeria. So that was the Biafra to the east of the country. But they were not successful. So I was born not quite long after the end of that civil war. And Nigeria was well economically because it has discovered crude oil just towards the beginning of independence, towards 1960. So the economy was doing quite well. In fact, if you leave Nigeria to go and study abroad, you don't stay abroad. You return immediately. Yeah, because things were happening, the economy was booming, people were coming back, and things were really good. So it was the onset of what I call the Great Nigeria that happened.
Okay, I'll come to the bit of what never happened later on. So, at what stage did you move out of your town or your village now to go and pursue studies and the rest?
Excellent question. So, I was on a path saying that there was a school in my village. Not actually my village, in the next village to my village, about half a kilometer. So we will go to that. It was a much bigger village than mine. So as I was finishing elementary school, Nigeria was going through this transition where we're transitioning to a democratic rule. And it was divided between the north and the south. The southerners prioritizes education. And the leader of the party, called the Unity Party of Nigeria, I don't know if you guys are quite acquainted with him, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, a real visionary, said, there is nothing we can do in this country without education. So as I was finishing elementary school, I was so happy that I would be moving to the city. But because of this transformation that was happening, Chief Obafemi Awolowo said he wouldn't prioritize people moving from the villages to the city. So it was really pushing schools, high schools, to be built in the villages. And before you know it, there was a high school in my village again. So I couldn't move to the city.
He really messed it up for you.
That's correct.
So then you kind of, with that political vision and what you managed to do high school in the village.
That's correct. So I finished my high school. At that time, instead of in South Sudan you call it grade 12, or in Canada it's called grade 12, but here I think it's
S4.
S4. So at that time it would have been S3. So you do 6 years of elementary and 5 years of high school. So 11 years. So after I finished the high school, and you had to write what we call the General Certificate of Education, O-level.
Yeah.
So I wrote my O-level exams. The results weren't good. So, but I wanted to go to school. So I told my dad, I have to go and retake. And my dad said, great idea. So that's how I moved to the city, to retake my GCE O-levels. And I did that. I was able to get all my credits to be able to pursue post-secondary education.
So then, from there you go to the university now, or?
Correct. Yeah. So the way in the West African world, back then, I don't know what obtains now, is we write the same exam. It's called the General Certificate of Education, ordinary level. In Nigeria, in Ghana, at least in all the English-speaking countries. If you do not have the requirements to pursue post-secondary education, you have to rewrite this exam again and again and again. It's a real nightmare for all students. It's a real nightmare because it was really challenging. But I managed. The second time I wrote it, I got my credits. I was able to apply to go to university. But also to pursue post-secondary education after having the O-level credentials, you have to write entrance exams. So To go to university, you have to write what they call, at that time, the Joint Admission Matriculation Board exam.
Wow.
And when I first wrote it, I did so terribly.
Whoa, again?
Again. So I failed the second time, the third time now. So, and you only had a chance once a year to write that exam. So I have to wait. The year that followed, I researched, I sought every help I could get to write the exam. And
did you consult the gods?
of course. My parents were worshippers of the god of iron. If you're very familiar with Nigerian history, we have the god of iron, god of thunder, god of water, all those gods. We have 7 of them. Anyway, I digress. So I had to prepare for that exam again. And I was at this time, very ambitious. I wanted to be a doctor. And Nigerians they're too smart. So for someone who came from the village, I had no chance. So when I wrote the exam the second time, my marks weren't as good for me to go into medical school. And this is now my 4th year, my 4th attempt. So I said, you know what? Time is going. What can I get with the result? And they said, well, we can admit you for agriculture. And I said, well, my parents were farmers. I grew up as a farm boy, so I'll take it. So I went in and did agri-economics.
In which university by then?
The name of the university is called Ogun State University, but now it's been changed to the name of the former governor of that state, called Olabisi Onabanjo University. So it's a state university, but also quite a good one. And I didn't realize how good that university was until I got to Canada.
So when you talk about a state university, you put it into context. It's not like, when you talk about a state in Nigeria, it's not like Jonglei State or whatever, or Central Equatorial State, few 100,000 people. Like, what is a state university in terms of the population of the state and even like how the university looks like?
Excellent. I mean, by now you already know I've talked so much about Nigeria. It's a very densely populated country. So yes, it's like Jonglei State, Central Equatoria, Western Equatoria, Baragaza, and all of that. But the difference is lots and lots of people. So Ogun State is probably the size of Central Equatoria State.
Wow.
Yes. But with 4, 5, 10 million people, that state.
That's almost the population of South Sudan.
That's correct. Nigeria is now about 200 million. I'm sure it's more than that. Conservatively, 200 million people. So Ogun State, probably the size of the population of size of South Sudan.
So mostly when you're talking about this exam and whatever, you're probably competing with a lot of people who are hardworking and smart.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people. And one thing I came to realize later is Nigerian parents push their kids when it comes to education. So for those of us that grew up in the village, we didn't get the same sense. For example, if you're in Lagos or in my hometown of Abeokuta or Ibadan or Akure, and these southwestern states where nothing happens except you go to school, then you're really competing with some smart children.
Yeah. And you were not thinking of playing football or anything?
Of course I did. Of course I did. As it happened, my dad had a grade 7 education.
Yeah.
From the story he told me, he was an excellent goalkeeper going to school.
Yeah.
So he thought he was going to make a career out of being a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
But I guess years into that profession, he got hurt as a goalkeeper, and he got abandoned. So we growing up, my dad would tell us this story. If you get hurt, that's the end of your career.
That's the end of your football career.
So you better face your education as opposed to being a footballer. And there are times he would tell us, no, I don't want you guys to play football. Just go to school, get a good education.
And then so you finish with your agricultural economic studies. What next after that?
Good. So after I graduated, finishing the Bachelor's of Agri-Economics program, which, as you can tell now, I did very well because I had agricultural background. My dad always tells me, it's education, nothing else. So I did quite well. My results were really, really good. And I told my dad that I would like to study abroad. And I started nursing that ambition while I was in year 4 of my, so my program was a 5-year program while I was in year 4. there is this international exchange that happens between Nigeria and some of these European countries like Denmark, Netherlands, where as an agricultural student, you can go for like 6 months. I applied to that program. I wasn't successful. That was where I started nursing the ambition to say, look, if there are opportunities out there, I'd like to pursue it after my graduation. So, as you can tell, I continue to push and look for that opportunity. But something I also learned in my journey is that sometimes opportunities comes from where you least expect it. Nigeria has this program they call the National Youth Service Corps, which I've pitched the idea to some of the senior leadership here in South Sudan.
It's like what is it? It's like is it a military training or a service? How does it?
So another digression. It's called National Youth Service Corps. Very popular. It's been there for a long time, and the idea behind it is very simple. Any graduate of any post-secondary education, be it a university, a polytechnic, or a college of education, have to undertake what they call the NYSC. The NYSC is birthed out of the vision to integrate students from across the country. It doesn't matter where you're born. From the west, they post you to the north. From the north, they post you to the south, to the southeast, across the country, to get some cultural exchange and understanding of the different part of the country. That was the idea behind NYSC. And it gives a lot of people the opportunity to see the other side of the country, to understand the culture, to see how they behave, employment opportunities and all of that. However, the very first month is a paramilitary training. You go to a camp, just like any camp. And soldiers, they will come every morning, they give you drills, you go for runs, in the afternoon, they gather you together again, you chant, you sing, you jog, just to give you some form of training and structure. And after that month, you're released within the state of accreditation to go and look for employment of opportunities. It can be teaching, it can be anything. And it's encouraged a lot of exchange. People get married within a different culture, they get the jobs and they settle there, they understand the culture better. Some people even start businesses. And I think that is one thing Nigeria also got right, apart from push for education.
So now the opportunity to go to Canada, it came like what, after that or through it?
The opportunity to go to Canada actually came during the NYSC. As it happened, after the camp, the 1 month paramilitary training, by the way, I did mine in Port Harcourt, which is south. I don't know if you know, River State, which is very, very far. And that was the first time I would ever leave my comfort zone, ever leave my parents, ever leave well, apart from Ogun State, I go to Lagos State is very near, like it's an hour. Lagos is 1 hour. Ibadan is about an hour. The first time I would ever leave the Yoruba area, and it was a culture shock to me as a Nigerian going to another part of Nigeria, because the culture, the tradition, the language, everything was completely different. But I have to orient myself. But it was during that service year that I met a friend who was going off to Canada. And I asked him, what's going on in Canada? And he told me, look, I'm going to do my master's. So I started to ask questions. That's how the idea of going to Canada was birthed.
How long before that the opportunity opened for him?
It was the year after. So he had started this process the year before that youth service. The moment he graduated, he applied, and during youth service, he got his interview and he got his visa, and he was leaving immediately after. It was during the youth service that I applied to go to Canada. I applied because as it happened, we did the exact same program. He did agri-economics. We had this very similar results. And I said, look, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. whatever you apply for, that's what I'm going for. So I applied for exact same program, same university, same department. And before you know it, within 3 months, I got admission. So I was admitted. And I told him, I said, look, here is my admission. I saw your visa. You're going off. If I make it, I'm coming to see. And my friend, he's one of my best friends now. We stayed connected. So a year after I got my visa, I met my friend, who I'm sure he won't mind for me to mention his name. And we studied together at Dalhousie University, same program, economics, and we both joined the Federal Public Service. And he is actually doing very well as well.
When you arrived there, which part of Canada did you land in?
It's called Nova Scotia. It's in the eastern part of Canada. If you know the eastern part, just New York, right up.
Yeah.
Halifax, Nova Scotia. The name of the university is Dalhousie University. It's a very good university if you're thinking about going to Canada, by the way. Lots and lots of international students from Africa, from all over. And the bond, when you go to such a very close-knit community like Halifax, is you can easily see the diaspora. And that is one thing I really learned when I got to Halifax. It's a small city, well, maybe no longer small, about 500,000 population. Lot of universities, a lot of international students. So we bond quite easily. So Dalhousie University, I'm advertising for it. If you're going, let me know. I can connect you.
So when you finish you get done with your master's, and you told me you joined so there's a program for integration now into work in Canada?
That's correct. And I think this is one of the highlights of my life that I would like to give a shout out to for Canada. Canada is truly a land of opportunities. After finishing my master's, there is a pathway for me to become a permanent resident. And I think that is still the same today. A lot of people go because that opportunity is there. There is nothing to hide. It's open. If you finish your program, you want to stay in Canada, that pathway is there. You apply, and you go through the process. You become a permanent resident. You get a job, and then after that, you can become a Canadian citizen. Also to add that every year, Canada welcomes over 400,000 people from around the world as permanent residents to Canada. Every single year.
That's a lot of people.
Correct. Population growth in Canada is by immigration. It's not by birth. As you know, we don't want to give birth so many, People don't want to give birth. They give birth to one and said no, or they say, no, I don't want to give birth. It's too much work. So, and being a very large country, the population is about 36 million. And Canada is like 5 times the size of Nigeria.
Wow.
Big country, small population. So we need lots of bodies.
And the government needs more people to run everything and to pay tax and what?
To grow the population, if population by birth is declining, and you want to maintain the same social status, you want to grow the economy, you want to maintain the infrastructure and everything. So it's a win-win. Canada is looking for people. People are looking for Canada. Come to Canada, and you can realize your dreams, because truly it's a land of opportunity.
So you joined the federal government as what?
Yes, but we won't have time. I won't have time to unpack the journey from upon graduation, being a permanent resident, being a Canadian citizen, because there is a process. The moment you become a permanent resident, it's just a matter of time. It's a matter of time before you become a Canadian citizen.
Matter of time and not doing any fishy things.
Correct. Correct. I have to underscore that. It's really an excellent point, because when you talk about rule of law, when you talk about the justice system, when you talk about a system where there is no limit to how much you can dream, then there's also no limit to how much the system can catch up with you. If what you think you want to do is do fishy things, the long hands of the Lord, sooner or later, is going to catch up with you. So if you go straight, you want to do the right thing, you want to study, you want to get education, you want to dream, you want to build multi-million-dollar company, the dream is yours. In fact, Ontario, the motto of the state is yours to discover. And what that means is you come, you bring your brains, and you dream, and you can reach. You can dream, and you can go for it. But also, if you think you want to do the fishy things, then you can go into that, and then you'll see the results.
And then you see the results of that. So, as you said, we will not be having a chances to unpack all of this, but I want to kind of like probably fast forward a little bit and understanding like your journey now as a public servant or as a diplomat or someone who works in the diplomatic corps of Canada, because that's also the underlying theme of those. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So after becoming, one thing I need to stress is to work for the federal public service, you have to be a Canadian citizen. That's the only requirement. Yeah. Once you get your PR or permanent residence, you can do any kind of work. You can work with the municipal government, you can work with the provincial government, but not the federal government, because there are security requirements for you that you need to clear to be able to work at that level of government. So when I finished my master's, my eyes was on the federal government. Yeah. I wanted to be, a federal public servant, because that, to me, seems like the, highest level. But before I became a Canadian citizen, I got a job with the city. The Halifax municipal government then is the lowest level of governance. From there, I work with the state government, like provincial government, like government of Central Equatoria. So during this time, I was using it to kill time for me to become a Canadian citizen. But the moment I became a Canadian citizen, I applied for jobs within the federal public service. And I was lucky. I was lucky enough. My first job was with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, which is the federal department responsible for agriculture. Anything agriculture, from crop production, livestock production, name it. Canada exports a lot of agri-food and agri products abroad, from lentils to chickpeas to beef to milk to, in fact, any product, name it. Canada exports it. And sometimes people are like, that's a very cold country. How do you produce? The production season is so short. The production mechanism is so advanced that within that short growing season, the productive capacity far outweighs the consumptive capacity. That the extra, we just have to export it. So I work with the department for about 4 years. And then I got another opportunity to work at the Fisheries and Oceans Department. It's another department. Canada exports a lot of fish as well. Yeah. A lot of shrimps, a lot of seafood across the world. So I was in that department also for about 5 years. And then during all this back and forth, I was interacting a lot with our Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, because I've now specialized in my profession that I get to do work related to trade negotiations. So when I was with the Department of Fisheries, I was the lead expert on fisheries negotiations. So at that point, I was like, why can't I just join the department that is really the lead in trade negotiations? So I made a pitch, and I was accepted. So I joined the department now called Global Affairs Canada, which is where 80% of Canadian diplomats originates from in 2015.
In 2015?
Correct.
And you joined as what?
I joined as a senior policy analyst. So the department got amalgamated. I don't know, many of you might know old Canadian International Development Agency, which used to be the department really responsible for development, was a separate agency. And Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade was responsible for foreign affairs and international trade. But right around 2014, the government decided to merge these two departments, this agency and this department together to form the Department for Foreign Affairs, International Trade, and Development, combining three ministers together. There was a change of government in 2015, and that government changed the name to Global Affairs Canada. So that's why we have Global Affairs Canada today. But with that three ministers, minister responsible for international development or international assistance, minister for foreign affairs, and minister for trade. And last year, our minister for international assistance was here in Juba, South Sudan. And that is just one arm of the department.
Global Affairs.
Yes, of Global Affairs Canada.
So when you joined that, were you posted outside the country, or you worked in the ministry for some time?
So, no, I didn't get posted immediately. Actually, my posting to South Sudan is the first posting outside of Canada. So this is my first posting.
Yeah, but you are doing a lot of work, because I saw in your bio, like you're doing work on EU?
Yes.
Yeah.
So one good thing about the Federal Public Service is it's cross-pollinated. When I was at Agriculture and Agrifood Canada, last I mentioned before, I was working on trade-related work. One of the work I did was on food security and quality assurance, which links into our technical trade policy. And technical trade policy is a massive part of any trade negotiations. I'm getting very technical here. But all are linked. Fisheries, agriculture, even finance, even natural resources, industry, everything is linked when it comes to trade negotiations. So all that experience allow me to be able to position myself as also a trade expert. And now when I move to that department that has three unique areas: trade, development, international foreign affairs, I could move from trade to development and vice versa. So when I joined the department, being that my background was development, I did development economics at master's level. My work in Nigeria was also on development. I was on the development side. But given the range of work I've done within the Federal Public Service, on trade negotiations, on agriculture, assurance system, I could move to the trade side. So right around 2017-18, there was an opportunity on the trade side of the department. So I moved to the trade side and became a trade commissioner. So that allowed me the opportunity to look at trade-related technical assistance. I can look at trade and development nexus, and I can go back and forth on that. So when the opportunity came in 2020 to go on posting, I moved back to the development side.
You're very mobile within the department.
What is good that I can share is don't restrict or limit yourself. It's always good to broaden your horizon whenever an opportunity presents itself. The only thing I haven't done is being a political affairs officer. I've done trade, I've done development, I've done anything from human resources, I've done anything on research, I've done things on health, I've led primary research with the School of Nursing when I was at Dalhousie University. Just a range of experience that when an opportunity presents itself, you can say, oh, I've done this, I can tie to this, and here is how I can bring my experience to bear on ABCD.
So with all this experience, all this richness, when the opportunity for the posting to come came to you, instead of you going chilling in Scandinavia and what, you're like, okay, take me to the hardest place. That one on the list. Like how you opted to conduct to do posting in South Sudan? Or actually, kind of like it was available?
Actually, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, I chose to come to South Sudan, and I will explain in a minute. when the opportunity came, like you said, I could have picked anywhere. I could have gone to France. I could have gone to New York. I could have gone to Southeast Asia. I could have gone to Tokyo. I could have gone to Canberra in Australia. Anywhere, really, because the opportunity there is, they list everything. But also, my choosing South Sudan was very strategic. Remember I mentioned this is my first opportunity to go on posting. And there are people who are really, really experienced. They have 20, 30 years of experience across the world. How am I going to be able to compete with those kind of people? And they've paid their dues going to places like South Sudan, Nigeria, and I won't be able to compete. So I was like, okay, what are the places I can go where, number one, I can leverage my experience as someone who was born in Nigeria, have the experience both on the development and trade side, where if there are a lot of people with experience, I can really compete. That was one. Two, and then I look at the circumstances surrounding the living condition on a posting, and I said, look, I have nothing to lose. I was born in Nigeria. I look at South Sudan. There are lots and lots of similarities. You know, ethnically very diverse, same thing as Nigeria. There is crude oil, Nigeria, an oil-producing country. Agriculture, South Sudan has the most arable land. I was a farm boy. So, those are three things. And then look at language, okay. And then I look at myself like, well, I don't know what it would be. I was born in a small village, you know. How worse can it be in South Sudan? Yeah, can it be worse than my village? Maybe not. So I said, it looks so perfect. I mean, and that's how I...
if you're chilling in Phoenicia, and what is this place called? And Tulip and what, definitely it will. So when you arrive in South Sudan, what is your first posting?
So
what is your first kind of like assignment?
Assignment, excellent. So actually, this is where it gets very... I cannot overemphasize the importance of grabbing an opportunity when it comes. At some point in the posting process, I started having doubts as to whether or not I should come to South Sudan. Because some other opportunities now opened up that were better in terms of hierarchy, in terms of opportunity. I said, look, maybe I shouldn't go for them. Maybe I should go for those opportunities. And also, this is another tip about having mentors or people in terms of career development. So there was this gentleman who I respect a lot. I've been consulting with him. I run ideas by him. I was like, listen, these opportunities, going to Juba, South Sudan, basically, I don't think I'll be gaining much experience in terms of advancing my career. Here are new opportunities. Can I go for those? And that man told me, it's like, look, I will advise you to take Juba, South Sudan, and he gave me a very good analysis of why I should take South Sudan. So the position when I first came, I was the lead analyst managing Canada's investment in the health sector. And the health sector is Canada's largest area of investment. So it wasn't just a small job, it was a big job. Canada's investment in health is over $60 million a year. Wow. It's over $60 million. So, and it's our largest area of focus. So I was like, okay, that's a good one, I'll take it. So he really encouraged me to take that, and I did. So that was my first job when I came to Juba, South Sudan in March 2021. But 6 months after, the position of head of cooperation opened up. Actually, it had opened up before then, and I wasn't sure if my experience was enough to be able to get that position. But that position was unfilled, even when I came to South Sudan. So I said, listen, I'm here now, I know the land, I know the context. I'd like to throw my name into the hat. And I did, and I got it.
I meet a lot of people who complain to me that aggressive Nigerians usually take opportunities in front of them. How true is that?
Well, I can say that it's very true. Because, I mean, all along you can see the threat. Um, you want to put yourself in when an opportunity, this fly won't let me rest. When an opportunity presents itself, you want to be in a position because I've done A, B, C, D, and look at what I've done and look at what I've achieved doing that. And you can point because they're concrete. You know, I've done this, I've achieved this. Look, you can verify it. It's verifiable. You've asked me to do this, I've done my best. See, look at the result. And then you can point to something else. This is what I've managed. So all that speaks to itself. It speaks to you. It speaks to your competence. It speaks to your ability to manage and to undertake things. So when that opportunity came, you know, my higher ups in Ottawa said, okay, we'll give you the opportunity. And that's how they offered that opportunity as the head of cooperation. And I took it.
And then, like, the position for the head of mission, it was very recent.
That's correct. Again, it speaks to that hustling spirit, I would say.
Yeah.
So what had happened was about a year and a half into the head of cooperation position, which is a very good job. I enjoyed it so much. I was the co-chair of the heads of cooperation, in which I lead all the donors and all the UN agencies with the international financial institutions and the government. We meet together and we discuss development, humanitarian, peace and security operations. So that was central. I was leading all the development or international assistance project for Canada, from our health to education, food security and livelihood, governance. I was in charge of that, and I was in charge of an excellent team. As it happened, the opportunity for the head of mission came around October last year, and I was approached if I would be interested. And again, as the hustling spirit and the can't-do spirit, really, I went back and I thought about it, and I look at what would that mean, not just for me as a person. What would it mean? What would it mean for my career advancement? What would it mean for my background?
In terms of representation?
In terms of my representation. And I gave it a lot of thought. I know it's going to be a lot of work. I know it's going to be a lot of new challenges. I know it's going to be a lot of, you know, stretching myself. And I gave it a really good thought. And I went back and I said, I'll take it.
And I can imagine after that, they'll probably move you to the bigger room. Big car. But it's slightly more responsibility.
A lot more
Because
responsibility.
almost every Canadian within the country, you almost kind of like you are the representative of them to the
That's
here.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes, I know people have called me ambassador. They've called me this. Yes, the position is the same as the position of the ambassador. Is the same as the head of mission. Is that one position?
Yeah.
But there are nuances and differences around it, which, you know, I won't unpack. But the head of mission position is called the CEO of Canada in South Sudan. That's the title.
Yeah.
The person who occupied that position is the chief executive officer, representing, is the highest level of representation for Canada in South Sudan. And I didn't take it lightly that opportunity was afforded me, because it's a lot of responsibility, like you've said. Responsible for managing every aspect of the mission, from common services to fleet management, to the dev team, to the peace ops operation, to political, everything. And shout out to my team as well. Yeah. They've been really very graceful. I have here my wonderful and lovely and very supportive executive assistant.
When you meet some of the other, I don't want to mention them, the other Nigerians, what is his name? Obi or Ademola, you my guy. you're doing. But is there a sense of pride from both of your cultures in this kind of representation? Because this is an excellent display of excellence and career prowess.
Absolutely. And I'm actually really very happy that we're having this conversation during Black History Month.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity to highlight what Black Canadians have done, what they've achieved, what milestone they've really achieved being part of Canada. And I think this is where I really appreciate the opportunity, the growth, the openness that I have got since moving to Canada. And I understand there are several conversations that we could have, and it could go in any different direction. But my experience as a person has been that I have really valued the opportunity I've had to grow and to develop in Canada. I cannot overemphasize that. It has really, for me as an individual, I've met excellent people in Canada. I've met really people who value, yes, I know this issue of racism always crop up. Yes, there is that. And there are really good people that you can interact with from across the culture, either white, either black, India, any type of race. So, and also, I would also underscore that one's attitude goes a long way in making that happen. So, back to your question, yes, I feel very, very proud to not only represent Canada here in South Sudan, but also to speak to my country of birth, Nigeria. And whenever I represent, I go to high-level meetings, people sometimes ask, are you Canadian? I say, yes, I represent Canada. I might not look like a real Canadian. I am Canadian. But I know what they're getting at.
Yeah.
You're black, and you're representing Canada. Can you tell us how that came to be?
Yeah.
And I don't shy away. Immediately I tell them, yes, I was born in Nigeria, but I'm also Canadian. This is why this has happened.
And also it's a very good entry point for discussions with the government here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think if it's even easier when there are conversations that needs to be had. The first time I went to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they thought it was the embassy of Nigeria that was coming to have a meeting. Until I said, no, this is the embassy of Canada. And they said, oh, wow. Are you really, really Canadian? And I said, yes. Yeah. So it's easier to have those conversations. Sometimes it's even easier to organize meetings, ask for a meeting, because he looks like one of us, or he's our brother.
Yeah,
let's talk to him. And which is, frankly speaking, I think it's a win-win. It's a win-win situation. I want to be frank. I want South Sudan to be a country that is prosperous, that is booming and having growth, that security is no longer an issue, and we can have that conversation in a frank and open manner.
Yeah. Thank you. I would like to open it for questions. We'll take a few questions because I can see the director is signaling for me the time. I know there's a camera that's going to face that side. Can you test that mic if it's working? And George, have the sound on it. It's okay. George, you can get it on the headphones. Okay, so if we have that, we can take a few questions and then. Okay, super. So, yeah, no, we can pass the mic. New inform.
Thank you, Julius. Your story is very inspirational. I sort of wanted to touch on the last point where you mentioned that you are the highest ranking Canadian official in South Sudan, but possibly also one of the only black highest ranking Canadian diplomats in the world. So I wanted to, did that ambition to sort of reflect people like you being able to achieve the highest possible in the Canadian diplomatic service, was it a motivation for you when you were sort of pursuing hustling for these positions? What did it mean for you to be able to represent, sort of become like a custodian of black people, right? And what they're able to achieve and the type of excellence. The second one is on Canadian foreign policy, which is obviously a feminist foreign policy, but also Canada currently is the co-chair for the Women, Peace and Security group in South Sudan, together with Norway. And I wonder if there are lessons that young people can learn from the WPS experience. Right now, South Sudan is sort of crafting a youth peace and security action plan. So if there are things that you can share from the Canadian feminist foreign policy perspective, but also as experiences from the women, peace and security agenda, how young people can sort of position themselves in order to be able to push the youth empowerment agenda forward, but also see reflections of where young people are leading from the front. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. Yeah, my name is Geoffrey Mutinda. I'm a Kenyan working in South Sudan with a private company. Been here now like 20 years. Yes. Exactly. I came here a long time. I mean, we were the first people. I came to Juba in the year 2005 when we came with the body of Garan. That's the time we came to Juba. But I was still coming from South Sudan. I was in Rumbek. So I came here a long time, and my heart is here. South Sudan is my second home. I've now stayed here almost same time I did in Kenya. I want to thank the ambassador. I came here was it 2 weeks ago, when they had the function for the child soldier. And I heard a lot from the Canadian embassy. I heard about the 17 principles, child soldier. That's when I met the ambassador first time. So I just became interested. So today I heard he's coming for interview, and I also came. It's a big story for the ambassador. It's really touching us to be here with the Canadian embassy, who is African. You know, it's like when we had Obama being the president of the US, and we know he has roots in Africa. So we are really proud of you, Ambassador, and I want to thank my fellow South Sudanese, especially the youth, especially who are here. You have opportunity. Seriously, if you have ambitions to go and do your masters, I know most of you guys have done your bachelors either here, Kenya, Uganda. This is the opportunity, and you can see he's opening us. I was really not interested in Canada, but these days, because of his stories, even when we had the engineer, the stories of the engineer here, I think I'm really interested. I want this opportunity. So, guys, it's a time. It's God. It's God. So, let's have more interaction with the ambassador. Let's grab the opportunities. It's many times you apply for universities out there. You don't get the chance. But he's here to help you. He said he can help us with the university, his former university. He's well known. Grab that opportunity. Go there, learn. In 5 years, you come back a different person. You come back an engineer. Yeah? This opportunity, guys, we have heard the story, the way it's been grabbing opportunity after opportunity. I'm really interested, Ambassador. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. Mine was just a comment, and I thank you, and I urge you to continue encouraging the youth. Thank you so much.
Maybe we can hear from you, like answer to the two questions, and then Yene will come back to you. Let him answer the two questions from Animu, then we'll come back.
before I completely forget what
Yeah,
animal was
yeah,
asking.
what animal?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's actually very true. I think about 4 years ago, the only one person that I know who was black and an ambassador from Canada was a man called Edmund Wega. And it's also African of Cameroonian background. It was the only one. But one thing I've come to appreciate again about my new country, Canada, is it continued to better itself. Continue to better itself. Yes, we've been having conversation about representation, about black people being there, about these, talked about racism, anti-racism, inclusion, diversity, and all of that. And I think senior management continue to listen and continue to make changes. Today I can tell you on the continent we have at least 3 people of African descent that are ambassadors. Canada ambassador to Cote d'Ivoire is a gentleman called Anderson Blanc. Anderson is a black man and is Canada's ambassador to Cote d'Ivoire. And I think Canada's ambassador to Cameroon, she's a woman, Lorraine Anderson again, I think she's also a black woman. I spoke to our ambassador in Costa Rica. She's a black woman. Maybe mixed race, but she's a black woman. Canada's deputy head of mission in Lagos, Teshome Nkrumah, is a black man. And here I am as a chargé d'affaires in South Sudan, a black man. So Canada has been, in my mind, taking the issue of representation very seriously. And any country that wants to grow and develop will listen to its people. Will listen to its people. And I think that is one thing I can credit my new country for. Every year we do public service survey. Gloria can testify. And they ask all these questions. And they go and they do the analysis. Yes, there is a conversation that happens. There is a push that happens. But the government can say, well, I don't care. This is not an issue I want to tackle. But like I said, any country or culture or organization that want to progress will listen and make those changes. So this is one thing I say the country is doing and is listening, and we want to do better. And I hope in years to come, I want to see my children's children representing Canada across the world. It doesn't matter whether you're from Africa, in Asia, in Europe, in North America, people of African descent, black people like me, being Canada's ambassador across the world. I think that is my objective. And I think this is one thing at the levels of government in Canada, conversations that are happening, that we want every facet of society represented. And I think that message is resonating with the government, and they're taking it seriously.
It's also not just a good thing, but it's also good for Canada's foreign policy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it advances the interests of the country.
Absolutely. There is in my mother tongue they said, 2 good heads, not just one, not just good heads. 2 good heads is better than one. And when you see the diversity of opinion, diversity of perspective, diversity of views, that is what enriches any process, be it political, be it economic, it's that diversity of views, opinions, opportunities that makes it rich and better. So, and I think Canada is taking that seriously, and I think it's to the benefit of that country. Okay. To your second question, yes, Canada not only have the feminist foreign policy, we also have the feminist international assistance policy. So, and our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, when he came to power, declared himself as a feminist. And I think what he was saying is, there is a way where you run a country and you give every facet of that country, of that population, the opportunity to grow, to express themselves and to reach their potentials. And that is what is basic to these two policies, is that women need to be represented. They need to be at the forefront of our policy discussion, of our policy formulation, and of our policy implementation. And when you do that, because for the longest time, I mean, if you look across the public service, I mean, I work there, in position of power, it's mainly, mostly, I mean, 10 years ago, 15 years ago was male dominated and white men dominated. And when the government looked and said, look, if we want to build a representative government, then we need to ensure that every aspect of population, women, minority women, black women, needs to be represented. And then we go all the way from gender to race to sexual orientation and all of that, because the moment you open it up, you have to go all the way. You have to go all the way. So to your point, as we co-chair the Women, Peace and Security, yes, we have to be quite intentional. We have to be quite intentional, ensuring that these two policies guide our interaction. And this is why, not only in our development programming, women and children are central. They're central to our policy. When you look at our food security and livelihood programs, Feed 2, which is our security project, they're women-led. Most of the projects are women-led. Our education program, Girls Education South Sudan, is girls-focused. Health, delivery of basic social services is central, women and children. So with that, we can now bring that experience to bear in the work that we're going to be doing in the Women, Peace and Security for sure. And not only encouraging women to lead from the front, but also to participate and bring their wealth of experience and knowledge to the forefront. I understand that in an environment that is South Sudan, that might be a challenge. But we can only try and see where we go. We can't say, oh no, it's too difficult, we can't do it. So I challenge us as well. Let us come around. That is one of Canada's foremost policy priorities, is to include women and girls. And that is what we're pushing as we co-chair the WPS with Norway, for sure.
I'll take just one more, and then we'll close it. I can see there's just like Yine and then Lat, then we'll close it. Because the ambassador needs.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'm called Yine, and I think mine is going to be more of a personal question. I love stories, and your story is very inspirational. And I know as young people, we all have dreams, we all have ambitions, but I think fear always holds us back. So which personal principles do you have that we could tap into as young people of South Sudan?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Lad Peter, and I wanted to take the encouragement from my brother here. So I don't know, how do I grab my opportunity? Do I get your number or something so that we'll go from there? But I'm really motivated on all the stories that I've heard from you. I just got back from Uganda. I've only had 5 months here. And the reason I came back is my school kind of got stuck in the middle. I had completed senior 6, so the funds to proceed me to the university and all that kind of cut short. So I came back and I was trying to find a way like to complete that. You know, I was doing PCM, that is sciences, and I'm kind of pursuing civil engineering. So I don't know how I can get such opportunities like you got, I'm a new guy here. I was in Uganda for 15 years. I know nothing. I don't even speak Arabic. So that is what I wanted to know.
Why putting me in the limelight? Hi, Julius. It's nice meeting you again. I actually didn't know you were an ambassador. Honestly speaking, I met him at Baobab, and I'm beginning to think, is this a Canadian thing where diplomats just blend into the society and you not even know like this is a diplomat? And when you come to South Sudan, you find even an undersecretary in the ministry would have too much security around and intimidating people, and I don't know where that culture came from, but I admire how Canadian diplomats behave. I was a friend of Alan Hampson, who was representing Canada here, and we used to go fishing in Bor. He would come and we would go fishing with him, and no, he's not in trouble. And it was interesting how humble, Canadian diplomats are. And I feel like this is something that we South Sudanese should take on. And, humility goes a long way. Now, one thing that I wanted to know is, what is Canada's mission to helping young people in South Sudan realize their dreams, just as much as you also pursued your dreams and you left Nigeria at a time when things were almost not so good, and you made it to Canada. And another thing is, when you go to Nigeria, do you feel like you're at home? We have South Sudanese who come from Australia, US, and when they get here, they feel like they're in a foreign place, and they get questioned a lot at the airport, like, oh, you have an Australian passport, you don't belong here. Do Nigerians receive such kinds of intimidations on entry into Nigeria when they bear passports that are not Nigerian? Thank you.
We can wrap up with those three sets of questions.
Yeah, thank you. We can spend the entire night unpacking those questions because they speak to the heart of not just my story, but my person. I will start with the last question. When I went to Canada, when I got to Canada, I like telling stories, so I'll tell a bit of a story. My first class was a development economics class, and my professor was a very well-read, very well-published man, and he happened to be the coordinator of my program. So I needed to meet with him, and as a Nigerian coming to a new country, I was like, how do I represent myself? What do I call this man? In Nigeria, if someone has you call them a doctor. If he's a pastor, you say doctor, pastor. If he's an engineer, you say he's a doctor, engineer, pastor. So you have to line up all the titles. So I was trying to get out to address this guy. So like he has a PhD from Harvard. These are like, oh my God, that's. So when I got there, I was like, Professor Dr. Jeff. I am Julius. Like, no, my name is Jeff. Don't call me doctor. I was like, no, that I cannot. Like, you have a PhD from here. It's like, we're colleagues. I was like, no. I said, you're a graduate student. We go to class, debate. It's not a lecturer that comes and you write everything, you copy it down. No, we go. You read before you go to class. You go there to debate economics. Your professor tells you something, no, sorry, I disagree with you, Jeff. I think by Animo in 2018 when she wrote and presented that paper, that's what it was. So my brain started shifting from there, that it is not. And these professors will come to class in t-shirts and sandals, no suit. And so that's my first introduction to, it is not how much, it's not what you show, but it's how you project yourself. And that's where I begin to learn, simplicity. I know Nigerians are loud, they're big, they love big things. But my introduction to Canada is, you don't have to be big or loud or to impress. It's what's here that really will impress people. So I'm not surprised that the type of Alan and others, they want to be here, because really, there is no need to, be garrulous. There is no need to be proud. And no, there is something that comes with being simple, not, yes, there are times where you need to say, look, here is my position, and that position needs to be respected. There is a place and time for that. I'm not dismissing that. So, yeah. To your other question, one thing Canada allows is dual citizenship. So I do have dual citizenship, actually. When I'm traveling to Nigeria, I use my Nigerian passport. When I'm leaving Nigeria, I use my Canadian passport. So maybe because of that, I don't think I've experienced, yes, I mean, immigration and things anywhere you go, particularly on the continent, you're likely to be, people want to, but you just stand your ground and say, no, I'm not. That's, what do you need? I have my papers, everything is correct. You want to argue, we can get aside and argue. So I don't think I have experienced that kind of treatment. Maybe others have. But also when I go to Nigeria, I feel at home. That was where I was born. And I walk tall, I, go there. I enjoy my fufu and pounded yam and egusi soup because that's where I was born. Now to, I forgot your name again, I'm sorry. Yine. And I'll come to your question last. Personal principles. Someone wrote and he said that it is not life that matters, but the courage put into it. It is not life that matters, but the courage put into it. We won't have time to unpack that. But let me say this. I went to Canada not with a scholarship. I didn't get a scholarship. I applied everywhere. I couldn't get one. And when I got my tuition that year, my tuition was about $12,000. My accommodation, books, everything came to about $22,000. And I can tell you I didn't have $1,000 in my account. None. I didn't have $1,000 in my account. And I didn't have a job. But I said to myself, this, I'm going to pursue it to the last. And I'm going to Canada. Call it faith. Call it courage. Call it whatever. And I started pursuing it to the last. I started going to people. I said, listen, here is my admission letter to Canada. I'm looking for money. If you borrow me, I will pay you back. And I said to myself, there is no way I'm going to be able to raise $22,000. It's not going to happen. But I said to myself, if I'm able to raise $5,000, I'll go to Canada. So some reason I just have that assurance that if I raise $5,000, I'll go. And I ran, I did everything. I was able to raise maybe $3,500. And if I tell you this story, it's going to take all day. The day I went to get so at that time, the Canadian embassy wasn't actually in Nigeria. It was in Ghana. So I have to travel to Ghana. And the third time that I went, the first time I went, I was rejected. Another lesson. They look at my financials and say, well, sorry, you don't have enough finances, to go to Canada. Sorry. And I went back. I was dating a lady then. It's like, they told you can't go? She's like, we will give them every document they need. And you have to go back. I was like, they already said no. It's like, no. They said no. God didn't say no. You're going back. So we now traveled together with this lady, went back together to Ghana. I went back to another interview. As I was interviewing, she was praying, saying, you must get this visa. In the end, they said, come. But when you're coming, make sure you've paid your tuition. And I was like, I don't have money to pay the tuition. So all the money I had, 3,005, I sent it to the school. I brought the receipt and said, look. But I think there is faith and there is destiny. So the officer looked at it and said, okay, good. Issue me the visa. And I was like, here is a visa. And guess what? I had no money to buy my ticket.
Go back to those people. Here's the visa. I need.
Now I have visa to go. Actually, it was a 2-year multiple visa I was given. So I can go in and out of Canada. But here I am. I have no money to buy my ticket. So I had to go borrowing. So personal, yes. Courage, drive, faith, call it whatever. And that's how it happened. So to your last question about opportunities, yes, I mean, I can give you my email, but I have to stress that going to study in Canada is extremely, very competitive. It is. It is. And it's not a joke. And it's expensive. I just told you about back then how much it costs. So, but there are opportunities, there are scholarships, there are people you can help, but also personal disposition. How bad do you want this? And it's not a guarantee. I have to tell you openly because it is open. It's not. It's competitive, it's expensive, it's rigorous. So what are you willing to commit to it? Because it's not easy. I won't lie to you. It's not. It's competitive. So yeah. But certainly we can chat. We can talk. I am always open to converse, but I always like to encourage people. Don't give up. I don't know what's going to happen or not, but whatever wise words I have, I'll give it. I'll provide it for sure.
Ambassador Julius, thank you for your time with us tonight. It's such a gracious evening having you here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my story.
Yeah.
Canada has been extremely very good to me. I'm really, really happy for the opportunity I've had there and the growth I've had, and even being here in South Sudan to represent the country. It's been a great honor. Thank you also for that opportunity to share the story.
Okay,
and happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month to everyone. Thank you everyone for coming.